This is Poarker, a game set on polluted Mediterranean islands made with Unity, and this is how we are busy upgrading the visuals. In the first year of development, I had the idea that the main island in our game would have a town. It would be central to the main island and it would be in an Italian building style. I wanted it to be beautiful and cute, cause who doesn't love that? Now, at the time, I was very unsure how I would achieve this. I hadn't made a big environment like this that would hopefully be pretty dense and actually feel like a town. Turns out, like anything, your first idea is almost never the best. And that was for sure evident in how this first iteration came out. Problem was, I made the entire thing in Blender as one big object. I found that the easiest at the time, but this method creates issues in game engines because it's usually better to have loose objects so you don't have this entire big asset loaded or showing the whole time. If you have separate objects that populate the world, then the engine can cull those meshes, aka giving more room for things that are actually on screen. However, I was still satisfied with it at the time. It was for my studies and I felt it was fine for what it was for, but knew I'd want to change it eventually. And when we started working on the project again, that would be the first thing we'd tackle. So we removed the old town and started planning the new one.
The old town, although it had its charm, didn't entirely fit the Mediterranean vision we were going for. Plus, it didn't leave much room for gameplay or story variation. And yes, if you're wondering, I'm Angela. The first challenge with recreating the town was figuring out the layout. Like, what makes a good town? And how do other game devs even know what makes a town successful? So I did my due diligence and I googled some examples of game maps. These were purely for inspiration because this doesn't really tell me any thinking behind its layout. Then, I took it a step further and I read a couple articles and watched some videos where other people, mainly game developers or people in the game industry, give their take on what a successful game town looks like and what features it includes. I've linked an article I found particularly insightful in the video description. In hindsight, there is no cut and dry successful way to plan a town for a game. It really is contextual, in my opinion at least. Sure, there are some key aspects to keep in mind, like giving the space a history and a story through different types of buildings and layouts similar to real life. But at the end of the day, you'll need to make an educated guess on what's going to work for your specific game. And it's really important to use research as a foundation. Anyway, with my newfound town planning knowledge, my next step was to get a top-down view of our map so that I could plan the streets. This I did in Procreate, mainly because I find it quick and easy to iterate ideas and scribble some sketches. After some long, contemplative staring at my iPad, this is the street layout I came up with. I know, right now it doesn't say much about the building locations, but that's the next step. I knew I needed a main road through the town, I knew I needed some residential streets, some notable areas or landmarks, some retail space, and some secret nooks. So, in a new Procreate file, I took my approved street plan and I started to plan the types of buildings. Just roughly, because at this point we didn't want to lock in the buildings or location in case we find something else that works better.
While Ange was busy with the planning of the layout, I decided to start making some modular building blocks so we can improve performance and just make it easier to build out this new town. Thing was, how would this actually look? Well, that's where reference comes in. Reference is the most important thing when it comes to making anything. Whether it's the models, textures, or even gameplay, it gives you a baseline of ideas so you can just build upon that. Since this town was an Italian Mediterranean style, I definitely wanted white houses with orange tile roofs. The roofs were tricky, however. I wasn't sure how I would tackle that. For these types of hurdles, I like going to other games that have things I like and try to see how they made their art. The main game I looked at for the roofs was Overwatch 2. Overwatch runs like a dream and manages to keep stunning visuals. So I'll let it run here for a little bit and just check how cool this is. And so, with my reference, I made a roof texture in Substance Designer and I started modeling. I wanted modular houses, each varying in size from 2 by 2 meters to 5 by 5 meters, with some accessories like chimney roofs and window roofs, along with all their LODs. LODs, or LODs, are model variations that you swap between based on camera distance. Since you don't need that much detail, the smaller the object gets away from your camera. So I learned from looking at other games that you can have tiles that extrude here and there to boost the visual appeal of the roots. Each tile doesn't need to be realistic, that's what the texture is for. So I brought them into Unity, where we could start laying out the town based on the planning Angela did. After that, we started with other models and areas so we could start bringing in more nature and other assets that I had already made.
We still have a lot of buildings to finish and smaller details to fill in, but honestly, my favorite part is watching all the assets come together in build. That's the reward for grueling hours we spent modeling. But to get into the how, I start with some references too. Since we already have most of our foundational reference images, I take those and I run them through an AI image gen tool to get a more honed, stylized look and direction for a particular type of building, like a restaurant. Once I have a bunch I'm really happy with, I generally take key features that I like about the images and mash those together to create something new and fitting for the area that it's going to be in. But a really important step before actually modeling the build is getting a general idea of scale for the area in-game. This looks like creating a simple cube block out in-game covering the area where the building would be, and then Modernist just gives me the measurements.
Now that we know the direction the town is going, we can infer and use our newfound knowledge to upgrade other aspects too. Things like textures, clouds, toon shading, and terrain color. From the very start, I wanted Poarker to have a painterly-esque art style, so this last week, I started to lean into that a bit more. I made a new painterly brushstroke texture using an Adobe tutorial that I could reuse, and I ended up using it for things that I mentioned, creating the desired effect. So here's the current changes. I think it works, and I feel that it is closer to what I had pictured at the start of development. These are all things that take time and iteration, so if you are busy with your own project, be that anything, just remember that you got this. The first idea is usually not the best. So get out there, make some progress, and eat the elephant bit by bit. I hope this video was an insightful view into our planning and making. We are looking into creating a Steam page for the game soon. Hopefully that works out. We'll keep you guys updated, but be sure to subscribe to follow our journey and leave your ideas and suggestions below.